When you live by polls, all he ever does, a majority of Americans want, insert his policy here with no way to pay for it. Guess what? You die by the polls. Yeah. And right now, Donald Trump is doing well in the polls, and we've seen that Bernie folds like a cheap suit if someone boos him, because that's where all of his self-worth is tied up. I do think that Donald Trump is going to win 2020. I feel that I can declaratively state that at this point. But let me tell you kind of why. And I do want to know what you think out there. I'm definitely more confident than at this point last year. I wouldn't say 100% because I don't want to be embarrassed, but you guys apparently don't have a problem with it. Thank you, Hall. But I am more confident because things have changed. I used to say that Bernie would be the hardest candidate for Donald Trump to beat. I thought Elizabeth Warren would be the easiest. I still think that remains true, but I think that Bernie Sanders is actually far easier to beat than he would have been this time last year, which we'll get to in a second. But really, I want to be very clear.
So none of the national polling shows that. Now, we'll see if he ends up being the nominee, what the polls look like then. But none of the national polls now really seem that, or at least the abundance of them support Bernie winning. There's plenty in Antifa that don't like Bernie, right? Because Bernie's too far right for him, right? So there's plenty that support Antifa that are that support Bernie, but yeah, a lot of the Antifa members. I mean, Antifa, especially when you get to black bloc politics, is anarcho-communist for the most part. You might find others that'll join up in it, but the real kind of black blockers are usually much more in the anarcho-communism kind of thing, which would be against Bernie's social democracy, or even if you want to go even further and take the democratic socialism and give him that label, which might be a more fitting label, but his policies are very more social democracy instead of democratic socialist.
Here. Don't get complacent, folks, because now you have some people out there saying, for example, all these people in this studio saying 100%. They're lying. They're just not honest people. My point is, don't think because Bill doesn't get to vote 3 million times. It's still only one vote. So you need to go out and vote. Don't get complacent with this. But thus far, here's the first point as to why I think Donald Trump will be president in 2020. And you've heard me be critical of him when I think it's necessary. I'm not a cheerleader. I've talked about when I think he runs the risk of losing. Thus far, the Democrats, the debates, it's just been an absolute mess.
So I don't watch Crowder enough, but the stuff I've seen, he's been a pretty big Trump cheerleader. Am I wrong about that? Thinking of that? I mean, I think he's been more willing to whitewash a lot of the stuff there, but yeah. So Biden was a few percentage points over what the polling averages had him, or some of his better polls. I think the best I saw was like 45%. So, yeah, he outperformed there, and then Bernie underperformed again, which is concerning. I mean, I'd easily be classified as a social democrat with some of the policies I perform, but yeah, Crowder's been pretty much a cheerleader for Trump, despite him saying otherwise.
Raising
Let's talk about
the minimum wage to a living wage.
Do
we think building
really
the millions of units
really
of affordable housing
if
that we need?
that
Do we think
question,
raising taxes on...
Next question. Next question.
She looks like she's wearing a stuntman helmet.
Thank you. Senator Warren and Mayor Bloomberg,
Look
this
at Steyer
question is for you. I want to talk about, and maybe this is appropriate.
Can I just...
Okay.
Look at this.
You knew when you bought it they'd done that.
I get to answer this question.
Look, that looks like a pre-fight press conference.
This is amazing.
I mean, have they forgotten 2016? Right? There was a bit on stage where they were talking about their dick sizes in the Republican primaries, in the Republican debates. So it's really weird. Yeah. So it's like, pretending not to be a cheerleader when you are. Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't know much about Steyer's other stuff, but I mean, he seemed like a decent guy and stuff on there. I mean, obviously being a billionaire, there's other issues, and other things with her. But seeing him talk and do it and present himself, he seemed like a decent guy. So it's kind of sad he's out now. Like I said, it's sad for two reasons. One, because he was eating into Biden's support, and with Steyer gone, Biden's going to be a little stronger against Bernie. So it's not something I want to see. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of mess on yeah, But I mean, there's a whole bunch of mess like this on the Republican stage in 2016, right? I mean, Donald Trump was after like every debate there was something Donald Trump did that was making all sorts of news on violating presidential behavior, and now they're gonna say, oh, look at this shit show, and oh, this means the Dems are gonna lose, and didn't stop Trump, right? So it's a bad argument. First of all.
Tom Steyer. They've done something remarkable. Democrats, it's a miracle. They've made President Trump seem sane and like the only adult in the room.
Yeah, incredible.
You watched.
I mean, they haven't, right? This is crazy. This is I don't know how you say this other than whether they're right. Yeah. Ooh, every single county. Eesh. Yeah, that's rough. That's rough for. So, here's our early voting. Hopefully, early voting helps keep Bernie in the position to win like he did, and that any bump from this big win is gonna slip away. But yeah.
These debates and you go, man, this is like, we need some reason here. Can someone bring in President Trump? So this goes against you being not being a cheerleader, Crowder. This is you being a cheerleader for Trump by pretending you're not. It's really disgusting and dishonest. Yeah, he's up in Poland and Texas. He's up big in California. But it'll be nice to see if he does, but he's got to quit underperforming. The only front runner we have right now is Bernie. Okay, let's talk about this kind of this schism. He's caused this massive rift in the Democratic Party. Okay, so you have these other Democrats, or they call them now establishment Democrats, as they used to be known. All non-Bernie Democrats. Yeah. And then you have talking heads who are basically saying that Bernie Sanders, who's the front runner, is a stooge, a Nazi. He's a tool for Putin. Basically, pretty similar to everything that they threw at Donald Trump.
The happiest person right now, it's about 1:15 Moscow time. This thing is going very well for Vladimir Putin. I promise you. He's probably staying up watching us right now. How you doing, Vlad?
That's absolutely right. And James, there's...
I mean, if you think that Sanders can't beat Trump, like I think Carville does, and you think Trump's essentially a puppet for Putin, right? Yeah, I mean, saying that it's not some crazy conspiracy or anything like that. I mean, if those are those two things that you believe based on the Russia investigation and all the stuff that went on with that. Now, I don't think Russia did anything to impact the election in terms of the final results, but they were definitely involved in coordinating some stuff, or at least members of Trump's team were. That's why so many of his surrogates are in jail or facing jail time right now because of their involvement on the campaign. So. Yeah, well, I mean, it all depends on who's voting the Democratic stuff. So, like, some of the big cities are really lefty and weird, like, the whole keep Austin weird stuff, kind of reputation Austin has. So there would definitely be left-leaning and all that stuff there. But, yeah. Me, Divine Socialism, that's worker-owned, what is it, the means of production are controlled by the workers and publicly controlled and stuff, right? Yeah, and don't get me wrong, socialism, a lot of people get the wrong idea about socialism and what capitalism allows. So there's the extreme, like almost ANCAPism that seems to be coming over a lot of the right wing in the U.S. about what capitalism is and isn't. But there's a spectrum on capitalist theory, and there's a spectrum on socialist theory, and sometimes some of the capitalist and sometimes the socialist spectrum kind of interlap sometimes at certain points, right? Some things bleed together, right? So one of the things I dislike about a lot of the leftist talks on the internet is that if you just want worker co-ops, you're a socialist, even though market socialism hasn't been that in 150 years or so, roughly speaking, right? That's not what market socialism is, and like socialists in the latter half of the 19th century would reject that notion that a lot of socialists online are pushing as socialism. right? Just because you support worker co-ops. I brought it up earlier. Adam Smith proposed worker co-ops. David Ricardo supported it. And so what a lot of people are when they push that kind of talk on, well, that's just socialism, that's just it is, and that the very edge and stuff there, and was something that I believe Marx criticized pretty heavily too. Yeah. Oh yeah, they think it's there, but yeah. But I mean, even if the workers controlled, like, so if we had worker co-ops, everything there, and we had the markets and stuff there, we wouldn't, or at least the latter half of the 19th century socialists that make up a lot of the modern thought on socialism, and even the early 20th century market socialist debates with, Mises and Hayek were involved in it. They don't actually believe in actual markets anymore. And they would argue against something like, what's it, Mondragon, I think is the name of the co-op in Spain. Sure, but I mean, you can have co-ops in a capitalist system, right? And that's why, market socialism today does not hold on to what the Ricardan socialists of the early 19th century held. But all right, we'll get back in here and see what else they pick
It's
on.
reporting that that's
someone
exactly
turned that into a gross
what the
GIF.
intelligence agencies think is going on. I mean,
I got crawled like in my teeth.
that Putin is helping him, or plans to help him in the primary.
Really showing off his comedic skill. I mean, it's no wonder he's not a comedian anymore, when that's all he can make jokes about.
What happens if Bernie Sanders wins? I'm pretty sure he has a lot to say about billionaires.
No one but Bernie, Stephanie. Come on, he's an anarchist. He would love to burn down the United States.
And here we are. That's not what anarchy is. Now, I have issues with the way anarchists want to describe themselves because it doesn't sound... it still sounds like there's a government there, but that's a lot of my issues with some of the socialist theory and stuff, and how things, oftentimes the way conservatives here in the U.S. Treat socialism like any other government program is automatically socialism, when it's not socialism at all. I feel the same way a lot of socialist theory thinks about capitalism, right? So we kind of got some of that going back and forth and what it is, right? We, it wouldn't be reductionist, but it would be almost kind of a straw man of each other. But yeah, Bernie's not an anarchist.
I'm reading last night about the fall of France in the summer of 1940, and the general, Renault, calls up Churchill and says, it's over. Do they want Bernie Sanders to take over the Democratic Party in perpetuity? Well, I mean, he takes it over. He sets the direction for the future of the party. Maybe they'd rather wait 4 years and put in a Democrat that they like.
Chris Matthews always seems surprised that he has that job.
Well, and I get a lot of the outrage comparing the Nazi stuff there. So I mentioned this in the earlier bit of the stream that we streamed and put together for a video. I get the argument that he's declaring that Sanders won. Sanders the nominee going forward. He's the front runner. He's steamrolling. Now, obviously, with what happened in South Carolina, that was really premature of Chris Matthews. And like I said, I wouldn't go comparing people to Nazi situations. There's probably other military situations where you could go, it's over, kind of make that comparison. But yeah, you don't do the Nazi thing and making it. Yeah, the Central Park. Yeah, he's out of his goddamn mind on TV, like, and he must have a really cushy kind of control over what he has for his job, that he can say just about whatever. It's insane. I don't have one set up quite yet for the channel. I have a little one. I should go going forward, probably before Tuesday. I'll set up the channel as like a proper Discord. I had it for basically when we would stream Apex Legends about 10 months ago, me and some friends. But I have it. I have some stuff there, but I should go through and get it all properly set up for future streams. Oh, but Yeah, we could probably do that after we go through some of these videos. Yeah, you probably. I kind of hope Bloomberg ends up in that way, right? That he doesn't win a single delegate. But at this point, I kind of need. We're probably gonna need Bloomberg to sink Biden. Biden's come back. If we still want Bernie to win the nomination, but yeah, that's pretty sad for Steyer. But
huh? Oh, really? What do you think of Bernie Sanders? Like, well, what do you? What?
How did I get
What's
here?
the red light? Is it Christmas? That's the camera light. Shit. So you have,
Yeah.
like I said, brilliant comedian. I can't believe that he's stuck doing a right-wing podcast instead of having this excellent comedy career. Yeah. Well, part of it is I don't think anybody knew who Steyer, really knew Steyer. He didn't have any name recognition coming in. Like, if he had any kind of involvement, like, he hasn't ever been in politics before, has he? Right? I would love Bloomberg to spend $1 billion+ and just get absolutely obliterated. It's like I'm working on a scripted video for a response to Ariel Scarcella on her kind of coming out as to be a shill, even though for the last 4 years she's been doing a lot of this anti-trans content. But yeah, I got one coming out on her just because she puts so many instances of, oh, how horrible, and I got to leave the left. And the one that caught me and really made me want to do that video is her list of 97 genders, when the list is a list of LGBT terms, regardless of that doesn't have anything to do with gender. So there's like pansexual. So is pansexual one of the 97 genders? They had terms regarding like male to female or female to male, and transitioning. It was really weird. Yes, I am. I'll put my it's Red Venture on YouTube, small little animated one. So what happens is when we record these video responses, those go up there, but I also do scripted content as well. Scripted responses, and then because I'm a little animated character, eventually there's going to be some animated stuff that's probably more light, more fun. But yeah, I'm a real small YouTube creator, but yeah. Oh,
Bernie on the flip side, and all of his supporters, right? And I understand the pushback, but this is why it's only going to get worse, I think, for the Democrats, at least for the time being until they narrow this down, where they accuse all non-Bernie supporters of being establishment and centrist or just flat out evil billionaire elitists. That's their attack.
As you may have noticed lately, the establishment's getting a little bit nervous.
I wanted to go back to what you said about our left party. We don't have a left party in the United States.
So what was that about? I missed that part while I was grabbing my channel, sorry.
Of being establishment and centrist or just flat out evil billionaire elitists. That's their attack.
As you may have noticed lately, the establishment's getting a little bit nervous.
I wanted to go back to what you said about our left party. We don't have a left party in the United States. The Democratic Party is not a left party.
She says while literally sitting to the left of that gentleman.
Is he like eating a Hot Pocket? Is that why?
I mean, that's not wrong, right? The Democratic Party, or at least it's moving further left, so it's moving more to a more left party, but the Democratic Party runs center right to center left on the political compass, right? Or on the left and right scale, right? So there's but that's been changing since Obama, right? So the Democratic Leadership Council or whatever that was formed in the late 70s, early 80s, that was responsible for the third wave shift of Democrats. So the kind of the third positioning, the kind of we're going to maneuver between the rising neoliberalism in the Republican Party and neoliberal economics, and then we're going to find a third way between that and Keynesian economics and some other stuff, third wave weighing around social issues. So that went out 2011, I think, 2012. But yeah, that went out during. That's no longer a thing, right? That went down now. The what is it? The Institute for Progress or something else. Their think tank still exists. Still pushes stuff out, but they're gone, and the Progressive Caucus has grown, right? So we're slowly but surely bringing it more towards the left. So it's not quite the way you could have painted it back in 2008. But yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of where the left-right thing came from, though, is where the what's the French body called? But yeah, that's where we get left-wing, right-wing from, is from that particular period in time. So you had the royalists on the right, and then the ones supporting democracy and all these other forms of government from the Enlightenment were on the left. Oh yeah, the Democratic Party is to the right. Is probably more like, if you're going to describe it on world politics, like if we go like the UK, they're probably more in line with like the Liberal Democrats than say Labour. Oh yeah, it's more than just sitting in place, but that's where the idea comes from. Yeah. So a lot of these ideas are being talked about here, and that's kind of the thing of getting involved. And even if you don't necessarily win, you can make those changes, right? So that was Reagan's run before Reagan rose to power, helped pull the Republican Party to where it is today, even before he got in when he lost in, was it 76? My dates are just shooting from memory here. My dates are going about it. Yeah. So Sanders has had an effect on the party and helped pulled it there. Obviously, be more vocal and be more like, hey, we're going to support these progressive policies, these ideas and things like that among the Congress and Senators stuff. And so they don't, before where it wasn't all just kind of third way stuff.
He
burnt his mouth on a pizza
There are a lot of
bucket.
folks who are concerned about his rise and his surge.
Sorry about that. I had the door open on me. Had to step on top of it.
Urge, especially among young voters, that this may be causing some trouble for the establishment. Does that concern you at all?
Well, we need to cause trouble for the establishment because the establishment is who we're fighting against.
It has come up from a candidate who almost all of the establishment has pinned their main hopes on, and he's talking about bribing politicians in a positive way.
Yeah.
He's like, now remember Goldman
Bloomberg
Sachs? He's talking to Goldman Sachs. He didn't have to repeat it. They all already knew. Remember Goldman Sachs? Well,
that was a big slip up. Pago. I don't recognize the term for the policy there. So you elaborate a little more. I'm not recognizing by that term, but yeah, I'll say in the debate where Bloomberg almost said like, I bought these guys, was kind of funny. So I mean, this isn't wrong talking about it. But,
you do with politicians is you bribe them.
Because we wouldn't want to talk to people at Goldman Sachs.
No.
That would be absolutely absurd. Establishment is just the word that they throw. And here's the crazy thing compared to Donald Trump, because I know this has been talked about with Donald Trump. He's anti-establishment. But there's something to it, right? There's some teeth to it, because if you're anti-establishment as a conservative, as an outsider, as a Republican, you're
Let's see. Oh, all right. So pay as you go and stuff for balancing budgets and stuff. Yeah. I don't think anything should be quite that that strict when doing that there. But like I said, a lot of my politics still stems from at least how I understand or how I was raised fiscally conservative and those kind of things. Not in the way that a lot of Republicans will say they're fiscally conservative, but just like you know, you have a plan to pay for what you do. You know, it's better to balance budget when you do that stuff there. So, but I understand the limits with a lot of pay as you go. Kind of the strict stuff makes it very, very difficult to get some of that new stuff in, and maybe sometimes, right, it's okay to run a bit of a deficit when instituting certain programs, and then eventually they come back and pay for themselves right away. So I do understand that, but yeah, generally balanced budget, and then we do things that are fiscally responsible. So things like why I support universal health care is because it's cheaper than what we're paying now, and we get everybody covered, right? So whether that's ultimately ends up being the exact policy that Bernie's proposing, or if it's something more along the lines of a public option for the time being, because as you try to get policy through, there's going to be negotiations, and you're not going to get everything that you want. But those are things there. So, and then when you go and look to do those programs or expand those programs, you have a way to pay for it. Like, I would be down for for military spending. So if we wanted to go bomb or invade a different country, not saying I'm supporting any of that right now, but if you had it put in where like, hey, if you're going to go do this, you have to raise the tax to pay for this new spending that you want to do to go to war, right? And now we don't declare war or anything like that, but any kind of military engagement, right? It would be less likely that we'd go into those things, right? So that's the benefit, because nobody's going to want their taxes raised to go bomb brown people in the Middle East. Yeah, fiscal responsibility is how I take fiscal conservatism, right? So that's a big part of it there. And fiscal responsibility to me also means so like there's certain things that the way we do them now cost us more, even if we don't recognize it in what we pay for things. So like cars and stuff and climate change. There's coastal cities in the U.S. that are taking millions and millions of your tax dollars to prepare for climate change, right? Prepare for the effects there. So like Miami's going to be one of them, because Miami, the way things are projected now, is going to be underwater in a century. So they're taking some protections there to deal with the changes in between. That's costing you millions of dollars. Now, you may not recognize that coming from your taxes compared to when it's put on, like a new car, like some kind of VAT tax would be one way to think of it. So you have that stuff there, so you don't realize it there. But some of these other taxes and other proposals will price that stuff in better. And when you know that's going to be what it is, you make more informed decisions. Yep, there is.
Actually trying to some degree tear down the system. You're actually trying to some degree to shrink the role of the establishment in DC. When Bernie complains about the establishment, it's because he yearns to be that. He wants to have, or Bloomberg, when they talk about the establishment, they want to determine what sodas you can drink. Whenever someone says pro-choice, I won't use that term. They're pro-abortion. I'm pro-life, they're pro-abortion. They're not pro-choice when it comes to what car you can drive, what kind of soda you can drink, what you can pay in taxes, where you can send your charitable donations. They're not pro-choice in any other facet.
Ooh, boy. So he's going to try to flip the pro-birther argument, right? So this is the same. If he wants to claim pro-life and change the pro-choice, he's going to have to either change himself to pro-birth, because he's not pro-life in other situations, as far as I'm aware. But yeah. Yeah. So, and there's all these other things. There's some deep political theory we can get into this that I don't think a lot of these conservatives, right-wingers quite get. Like the whole taxation thing that libertarians have, really dumb. We have, so we can go back to like these ideas of private property and the theory and stuff behind it. So Hobbes and Locke. Locke specifically, in his theory of private property and stuff, land would be held in common, and the reason we privatize to use it is more efficient to give away to private and stuff. But when we do that, we can enact taxes and stuff, right? Because, hey, that's something that belongs to everybody, the land, and everything like that. And so that's what Thomas Paine uses in Agrarian Justice for arguing for a UBI. Is that, hey, we're giving up this land that belongs to the commons for people to exploit privately, because that's going to be more efficient, more effective in doing it there, but we can enact the taxes coming back for it. So that's kind of the tax theory that the whole taxation is theft nonsense that people like to push. You can't just abandon the theories. Oh, that'd be an interesting video to see. Yeah, I'm in favor of a negative income tax instead of a general UBI, but they're similar ways of, they're just different ways to go on about the same thing.
Outside of ending the life of another human being inside your stomach, right? They're not pro-choice at all. It's remarkable to me. They're anti. How can you be anti-establishment, just like Rage Against the Machine, when they campaign for Obama?
Yeah.
You rage against the machine by endorsing it,
except for this machine.
I used to.
I mean, this is another weird gotcha, the hypocrisy thing that Sargon was doing, and they all do it here, right? It's the Live in Society comic come to life, right? Like I talked about when talking about earlier how the superdelegates and stuff work, and the delegates and stuff in general. You know, you get involved with these things to get these things changed, right? So, you know, we got superdelegates off the first ballot because Bernie ran and he didn't drop out and he kept to the convention, so he got to leverage the delegates he did win into changing the rules, right? And while I'd prefer superdelegates not be a thing in general, they're not something, especially in the format they're used now, they're not something I find terribly objectionable, right? But I don't want to get too caught up in that while we're going over this video.
I think Bernie would be tough. Why? Let me explain to you, and this was a lot, if you go back and watch the segments, I thought, okay, Hillary Clinton lost a lot of states that surprised me. For example, Michigan. I think Bernie does well in those states because of the unions, right? It's easy to appeal to unions as a socialist more. A lot of the unions just believe that Hillary Clinton was an elitist, and the same thing with Michael Bloomberg, right? I don't think that Michael Bloomberg has any chance of winning the Rust Belt. I think Bernie has a better choice, or at least I thought he would have had a better choice to winning the Rust Belt against Donald Trump, and that's kind of what he needs to win this election. Here's the thing, though. Now we've reached a different point. He's a socialist revolutionary, right? Self-described. Well, a revolution means a 180 change in direction. It means you got to change everything because nothing's working. But 90% of Americans...
I mean, that's not what a revolution is, right? Yeah, I don't know if Rage Against the Machine endorsed Obama, but yeah. But like, I mean, Obama, if you're looking at it there, the hope and change message was very Bernie like in there, and it's disappointing that Obama didn't quite rule that way. But then at the same time, we probably weren't quite ready for some of the things that you know, that were a big part of his success, leading to success in the primary and all that stuff, and the hope and change stuff. We probably weren't ready at that point, but. Here, the revolution, no, is not everything changes 180 and everything changes up and do all that other stuff, right? That's not what a revolution has to be, right? So I quite like the thinking behind, even though it's a little more violent than I'd push for and stuff there, but I like the Jefferson's quote about future generations, you know, in getting things changed, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a 180 from where they are. So like a revolution in, say, healthcare would be going from the private system to the public system, right? Or something in between, or some negotiated thing in between with like a public option, right? So if you go to that universal healthcare, that would be something that's a revolutionary change for what we're doing right now. But it's not something that requires, you know, a 180 of the entire system to have happen. Uh-oh.
Don't want that right now. 90% of Americans are satisfied with their own personal finances. Right. Things are getting better for the average American. A lot better. The tax cuts, they reduced the income tax bill for, by the way, not just the super wealthy, the median income households by nearly 60%. Wow. Record low unemployment. Also layoffs.
Wait, 60% for the median income? Where the fuck is my tax cut then? Because I've been paying more in taxes. Even with some of the write-offs I lost with my own failed entrepreneurial attempt. You know, my taxes have not gone down 60%. So I don't know where he's getting that from. It's not listed in any of his headlines. In fact, everything I know is that taxes have went up a little bit for median households and middle class and stuff. Oh. Uh-oh. I lost half my chat. Hope everybody's still here. But yeah. So yeah, this is something that's going to be tough, is that unemployment is at historic lows. Now, that's not because of Trump. I mean, we were on an upward trend for a while. And the tax cuts didn't do anything for, as far as from things I've studied, done anything to improve that. Now, what it might have done is it probably staved off some other stuff, but it's not. Yeah. All right, there we go. Welcome back. Yep. Yeah, I just had everything on the screen kind of blip out on me, but everything still seems to be running. Am I still recording? That's the important bit. I'm not, so I don't even know how much I had. Oh boy, I probably don't even have a single video. I'll have to download this off Twitch. That is disappointing. Oh. So yeah, something must have happened with OBS and flipped. There we go. Yeah, something must have happened to OBS while I was running here, but so yeah, I have no idea when it stopped recording, so we'll find out. I'll look at that after I get off stream.
Also high job participation rate. We have increases in household income, wage growth.
I mean, the job participation rate is not high. It's, 63%, which is still down from where it was. But part of that's because of the boomers retiring. So it's not all a terrible thing. But yeah, but unemployment's the lowest it's been in 50 years. So that's probably going to be an obstacle, even for someone like Sanders. I agree. I don't know if that means Trump's still going to win, because the polling right now doesn't show it, and we'll see what happens when it comes time to vote here after the primaries.
Growth, record-breaking stock market. On top of that, we have people who are finally taking note of how...
Yeah, record-breaking stock market when it's had a rough week. Right? This is the wrong week to brag about the stock market, and with the hit it's taken. And so... Now, obviously, part of that's the coronavirus, but a lot of indicators were suggesting that we were headed for a recession this year anyways. So, hopefully not. Hopefully it doesn't get bad, but, I think the market beyond just the coronavirus is, reacting to what they saw was coming as a recession anyways. Yeah.
Good the economy is, according to a poll, because Mr. Sanders is almost entirely determined by polls. If you look at his policies, it's like, well, if you look at 80% support 90% of that's a lot of people.
It's like almost all of
We understand, Bernie, that you had a bad high school experience and now you want some friends. All right, we get it. Just like you're the guy who shows up to a party with an acoustic guitar, puff, puff, pass. You're a piece of shit. That's my point, okay?
What was the joke there? Well, what's funny about this? I don't get the connection between what he was doing with the impression and then now to this. What the hell?
But here's the thing. The Trump economy right now, he actually has the highest economic approval rating of any president in the last 20 years. Wow. Overall approval right now,
that's going to be 49%.
Yeah, his overall approval rating, and if you compare his disapproval, way better than Barack Obama at this point in his presidency. So it's really hard. I don't know what the argument is, and this is why you see that.
So yeah, easy. Polling-wise, good stuff there are good indicators for Trump. Now, I don't know about the disfavorable stuff. I'd have to look into that. I can't imagine they've improved much, right? So there's probably still a net difference there that's not quite in Obama's range. It's being hit just from guessing, but yeah.
Letter that was being circulated from Nancy Pelosi, if you were saying, I'm a socialist revolutionary, I need to change this system, that would make sense after the economic collapse. Right? When you're going back to the stock market crash in 2008. Okay.
Well, maybe the stock market crash going on right now continues, right? And that's going to push Bernie and that's going to hurt Trump. So this is spoke a little too soon, maybe. But yeah, but I mean, he's not a socialist revolutionary. What he wants to do, he's very reformist, right? And that's kind of the one of the big differences with social democrats and democratic socialists compared to other socialists that are more revolutionary in their thinking, right? They want to tend to do. It's a position that's going to eventually move you towards socialism, right? For some, not everybody's that's a sock dem is like, oh, we're gonna move to socialism. No, sock dem is like, yep, we're good right here, maybe, right? And that's gonna become where they become liberal stuff there. But the idea for a lot of them is that it's an intermediate stage without violent revolution. So, yeah.
Absolutely. It doesn't really make sense that we're going to tear this whole system down and start anew when it's better than it's ever been, according to 90% of Americans. I think Bernie Sanders is far less appealing right now, and the numbers should startle them. And I think it's important to note, by the way, this has been about turnaround. So if you want
So I wonder if what's affecting these polls is still the recession, right? I'll have to go look at the specific polls, but yeah. Yeah, correction, not a crash, yeah. Loose with my language. Thanks for correcting me, Maddie. Yeah, I have to look at the polls. I wonder how much the recession years and kind of the slow recovery in the job, or that wasn't quite reflected quite yet in the general populace compared to where they are now. And I think that's where the comparison is. And so the 90% isn't just that, hey, this is the best it's ever been in history. It's just, hey, it's better than what it was when we were recovering from the recession, right? So that's, I would think, I'd have to go look at the polls and see what the question's referring to, but I would think that probably has an effect. Sure. Right? Yeah, sure. But yeah, I still think like, hey, we came out of the recession. We came out of some pretty rough years, right? Now, granted, that was a while ago, but it hasn't quite all ticked up yet. Because, I mean, I remember trying to find work in those times, even, 2012, 13, 14 and stuff coming around, it still wasn't great. It was improving, and that's why I look at people that go, oh, the tax cuts led to this great thing. It's like, no, it's the same trend line, and I could see all these indicators beforehand. So I had a bunch of staunch Republican in real life friends and family and stuff talking about it, the tax cuts, and they're like, oh, he gave this the tax cuts, and such and such company gave somebody like $2,000 at the end of the year, each employee, right, in advance of the tax cuts. It's like, they gave that because that's the last bit they can write off, right? That's more they can write off this year going into next. That doesn't change anything about that, right? There's things going back to 2015. I think I'm going off of memory with this argument here, but there's like they're looking at the rising wages in 2015 and stuff, where McDonald's and Walmart and all these low-skilled jobs were getting like $10 an hour in my area. Some were getting like $13. Even back there. Now it's kind of caught up and it's holding there, but it was happening because of turnover rates and economic incentives more than anything else. And so the growth that they were trying to pin on the tax cuts, right when it happened, like the immediate effects, like someone's, oh, they gave out $2,000 extra and all that other stuff. It's like, no, like their wages were going up anyways, right? I saw things like working at Aldi's, I could get like $18 an hour doing some of that stuff, stocking and on how they run their store, right in my area. Wasn't really hard. And I knew that because it was hard to get people into the factory where I worked, right? So the temp workers we couldn't get in the way we needed to. And so we were running short. We were running a shit ton of overtime for several years there. Now they've revamped a lot of their policies and a lot of their shift work now, where well, actually, it's more they introduced a new product line that is kind of cannibalizing the product line I work in. So I haven't gotten the overtime I was in 2013, 14, 15, and stuff like that. So, I don't know. Kind of tangent there I went on. Yeah, no, the 90% of the homeless wouldn't love their lives, yeah.
I want to talk about the radical change, the radical... Well, first off, let's go back through history. The radical idea was this idea of a free society, a free enterprise. We didn't want royalty. We didn't want what effectively developed into what we now know as European socialism. I know that didn't exist back in the day, but we are talking about an oppressive government who had too much control of people's lives. This country was a great experiment in that we said, government limited. The role, I've described this before, it's like a hockey referee, right? You keep the pace of the game, make sure the players are safe. Otherwise, you keep your mouthpiece in, period. You keep your...
So, socialism and socialist theory evolved out of a lot of these ideas, right? The things that he's talking about and the things that he's changing. But it's kind of dumb because, like, even the founding fathers weren't completely sold on kind of the not direct democracy, but the more populist kind of stuff that we want to see now, that he would probably argue for now. That's why we have the Electoral College, right? That's why we have some of the systems we have in place right now, right? So they weren't completely sold on the stuff that they were there, right? But yeah, like I can go, like if he's going to argue with a socialist that wants a worker co-op, it's like Adam Smith, David Ricardo wanted workers co-ops, right? There was the early market socialists. Now they've dropped some of the market economy stuff, obviously, but you know, so it's like this stuff came out of those same ideas that you think were radical, right? That you think are radical now, and somehow you think the ideas before them were more radical than the ideas now. Yeah, I mean, like if you got your basic needs and stuff taken care of, it's really easy to go out and enjoy what we have as one life, right? I don't know how many people that drop in are religious. I know several of them that my regulars that watch aren't, but yeah, you got this one life, and having your basic needs met so you can do some other things and stuff is much more rewarding than slaving away 2 jobs trying to make ends meet.
Your mouthpiece, your whistle. I was like, what's the word? My weenie whistle. The whistle.
I don't think you should be talking about weenies while you're, imitating throwing something in your mouth there.
So, the rape whistle in hockey. You keep it in your pocket. In other words, you do not overly invade people's lives. You don't call fouls or you don't call penalties that have nothing to do with the action around the puck. If someone's not hurting anybody, that's not the role of the government, right? It's a very libertarian stance. That is the role of the government. Then we had Barack Obama. And by the way, not just Barack Obama.
So, I think what he's getting to with the whole... The whole thing here is that no, actually doing anything with the government is establishment. You're not an ANCAP. Please, like ANCApistan is a hellhole. People that are the Libertarian Party would do well to boot the ANCApistan people, right? It's not a system that's going to work, and it's not going to solve the stuff that you think it's going to solve.
You could also toss George W. Bush in there, and you could toss Bill Clinton in there. They were all pretty big government Republicans. Yeah. I have to acknowledge that. I think a lot of people do. And then...
Well, more like Canadian confirmed, right? That's the sport he goes through is hockey. That's the Canuck in him.
And Donald Trump campaigned on reversing that course. And here's the thing. Before Donald Trump, I was worried that you would never have any other conservative. And now we see Generation Z is going to be the most conservative generation ever. Why?
No, where's the this? I'll have to go through these polls. I'll have to do a video on these polls that they try to push as Gen Z being the most conservative ever, right? It's not. Like, I've seen the polls, it's not. It's just not as big of a jump as past generations towards more liberal. Yeah. But, no, and I think Trump's a conservative in any sense when he's running $1 trillion deficit just baffles my mind, right? It means that, the libertarians that argue for the fiscal conservatism that they argue for don't actually believe in it if they think Donald Trump's a true conservative running $1 trillion deficit. $1 trillion deficit.
Why? We had a lot of people baby boomers, right? If people look at boomers now and it's become okay boomer, which is so disrespectful. It's like,
he's gonna bitch about something being disrespectful. This fucker, like, I mean, I'm sure everybody here's seen the clip Carlos Maza did just on the shit he said about him, right? Like, what is this? Demanding respect for people when he's even in this video, like the shit he tries to make fun of and poke jokes at. Like, where's your bitching about the disrespectfulness there, Crowder?
Really, you're texting that from the phone? That it was created by boomers? You ass. Okay, boomer. You mean like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates? You ungrateful little pissant. So,
well, Bernie's actually older.
I mean, you know, I love how he's runs to them. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates are, you know, more liberal than anything he'd ever man for a bitch, but he's gonna stick up for him now. Like, I don't know. It's really dumb. Like, the okay boomer thing is more about it's an attitude. It's not an age kind of thing and what it's used for, right? Steven Crowder's a fucking boomer, right? It's you know, it's, I don't know. It's not understand. It's, for as much as the right likes to say the left doesn't understand comedy, it's, you know, this failed comedian trying, you know, that doesn't get any of it. It's just fuck my life.
Than a boomer,
that's
right?
true.
So that's why they're you know,
right. I guess people would say to him, "Okay, greatest generation of all time," but not you though. So I think it's important to note, like, baby boomers were really, really liberal. They were the ones putting the daisy right in the rifle. They were flower power. And then what happened? They experienced Jimmy Carter, and then they experienced Ronald Reagan. So they had contrast. And then they became more conservative when they got older. And I was always concerned when I grew up. I was saying, man, we don't really have that in our lifetime. We have Bill Clinton and George W. Bush. There's not really that strong of a contrast.
Maybe, yeah. It was someone's poking fun of it. Fun at his expense is why he probably finds it disrespectful. It's not that somebody's... Because I don't know anybody who would say, you know, Steve Jobs, the Mr. Hippy Dippy kind of guy, is very boomerish, right? Without even go that way. I know, like, even Bill Gates with the foundation work and the charity work he does is really nice. Now there's other problems with them, but yeah.
And then we had Barack Obama that was a continuation of that, and yeah, he's definitely more charismatic. So I thought young people, since they don't have the contrast of conservatism versus leftism, they're not going to naturally revert back to being conservative as they get older like baby boomers did. All that's required for people to be more conservative as they age is that they witness it. But up until Donald Trump, no one had witnessed it or anything even close to it. But here's the thing, when Bernie Sanders...
Again, Donald Trump, $1 trillion deficit. Where is your conservatism, right? Like, and then he's praising China's treatment of how to handle drug problems. Like, he did it, he even did it with was it Duterte? Was it oh god, I'm gonna look like an idiot. I can't place Duterte. Was it Philippines or where is he? The president or prime minister of? But yeah, they're kind of like, oh, let's just kill him. Yeah, really pro freedom stuff there, right? That you think the conservatives stand for. It's just being a libertarian and being a Republican cheerleader is really weird to me. Or being an American libertarian, because let's remember they kind of co-opted that word from actual libertarians who were socialists. No, I mean, that's what bugs me. Like, with it, why... I don't know why I don't just drop the fiscal conservative label for myself. Maybe I'm just too attached to it, but it really bugs me. Like, they're perfectly fine with it. They'll bitch about any kind of social spending and stuff like that, but when the Republicans run $1 trillion deficits and stuff like that, it doesn't matter. This is a great conservative, you know.
Talks about being revolutionary. No. The revolutionary sort of about face, the change was Donald Trump going in, and it's what they bitch about. The slashing of regulations, the slashing of taxes for people across the board. This is very new for people who might be in their early 20s entering the workforce, where now, even if they're liberal, they have this as a baseline. And then...
So, slashing regulations without care is not a good thing, right? Like, maybe in some instances, some regulations are bad and need to go, right? And I'll agree with that. And it's probably not the best way to go, but... I mean, just slashing whatever it is going around. Like, there's environmental stuff he's slashed, which isn't good, especially with the climate change issue we're facing. Yeah, deficits and debts only matter when it's the Dems. It's really dumb. It's, but I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm too naive in thinking that people should be smarter than that, but, what do I know? Trump is not anti-establishment, right? He's pushing lockstep Republican stuff, right? Like, what he's doing is no different than what Bush did, right? George W. Right now to present this as some kind of revolutionary conservative. It's not. Like, he's doing the exact same thing Bush did, right? It's not any different. And it's not to any greater degree or anything like that. So this narrative Crowder is pushing is really dumb. Like, it's ahistorical. I mean, he's lying out his ass. Like, I mean, no.
And what happens if there's another Barack Obama or another Bernie Sanders who admitted that anyone making over $29,000 is going to see a drastic increase in taxes? Go back to our segment on that with universal health care, Medicare for all. So if you have a 22-year-old liberal today who thinks that he likes Bernie...
What dress? I'll have to see this video. I don't know where he put it here, but the tax plan laid out is 2.5%, right? Payroll tax for over $29,000, right? So it's not a ton. I mean... Yeah. No, Trump is really bad president. Like, I mean, he's Bush bad.
Bernie Sanders, but he's getting X amount in his paycheck. Then Bernie becomes president, and it's X minus 20%, 10%. Guess what?
You're lying. Where are you getting the 10 or 20% from, Crowder? It's a 2.5% payroll tax. Now, whether or not that's enough to pay for everything, and maybe it needs to be higher to pay for everything Sanders wants. But, the 10, 20% stuff is not in his current plans. Right? It's a 2.5% payroll tax, right? Above the 2.5% you're already paying to Medicare as is. So 10, 20%, where are you getting that from, Crowder?
Made a conservative for life.
Right.
So I think it's important to realize that the Rock Against Bush, No FX, Rage Against the Machine, they are the machine. Bernie Sanders is offering nothing new, and the good thing here is it is going to create more conservatives in this generation than I think we've ever seen. And now, since the polls aren't good for Bernie, and they're good for Donald Trump, Bernie has decided to not so much focus...
You haven't shown one poll in a head-to-head matchup. You've shown some other data that you think might support it better, but you haven't showed a single national poll, right, into who people favor, right? And like I said, there's only been a handful where Trump beats Sanders, and it's within the margin of error. But for the vast majority of polls, Sanders wins over Trump. Biden wins over Trump. Bloomberg wins over Trump, right? So I don't know what polls he's looking at. He's looking at other data, trying to ignore the actual polls.
Focus on the economy. He is determined to make sure that he's going to do everything in his power, at least, no promises, to get an F rating from the NRA.
I have today a D- voting record from the NRA.
Right.
30 years ago, I likely lost a race for the one seat for Congress in Vermont because 30 years ago I supported a ban on assault weapons. We must be aggressive on gun safety, not be dictated to by the NRA. And I am proud that I have a D- voting record from the NRA. If elected president, it will get worse than that.
Ladies and gentlemen, your F president. By the way, hit the notification bell if you're subscribed.
Hey, some shilling. Oh, some shilling.
And hit all notifications because subscriptions don't mean. You have Dave Rubin, you have Ali Stuckey, you have Roaming Millennial, you have Glenn Beck, you have a lot of Senator.com/Mug Club. And of course, there's Mark Levin, you have Dave Rubin, you have Ali Stuckey, you have Roaming Millennial, you have Glenn Beck, you have all kinds of people over there. We try to give you your dollars worth. And we're not funded by a foreign caliphate.
What do you mean that? Like, I don't know. I'm more pro-gun than a lot of people put there. So I think there's reasonable policies to put in place to help protect stuff. But yeah, I lean more pro-gun in a lot of stuff there, but there's policies that can be put in place and things that would work to help reduce gun crime and stuff in this country. So I'm not against it, but I'm with more supporting it there. So yeah. Well, he's talking about the Blaze, so he's got a he knows who writes his checks, right? So he's got to service his daddy.
No.
So, but we'll take it, Al Jazeera. I know you're in the red. You're just hemorrhaging money. That Young Turks investment isn't quite paying off. YouTube had to step in with their news initiative, but we can do it. We'll even wear the funny hats. Here's something else I think people are forgetting. A lot of people don't realize, I don't want to say he's a good debater, but Donald Trump is a very effective debater.
Yeah.
And you have some people like this who are, for example, an analogy would be boxers. Like I would love to have George Foreman on the show. I think he would be one of the best guests ever. George Foreman was criticized for not being a great boxer. That may or may not be true. He was a very effective boxer. A lot of people said he just had that power, but what he would do is he would use this sort of cross guard. He would go in and he would use a technique that kept himself safe, that didn't really look pretty, but he knocked everybody.
Yeah. No, yeah. The Koch brother, the one that's left. But yeah, it's no, he's he knows he's willing to shell out and stuff. So if he had enough money if someone would pay him enough more than what he's getting right now, he'd drop all of his quote unquote libertarian principles, right? And he'd go support a far left person if the money was there for it. But obviously it's not, so he's gonna be this.
Out before Ali, pretty much. And then he won the heavyweight championship at 42. So do not underestimate how effective Donald Trump can be on the debate stage. Whoever it is, in watching these debates, I think he'll eat their lunch. So for comparison, I want you to look at how Bernie Sanders reacted to boos from the crowd at this week's debate.
What I said is what Barack Obama said in terms of Cuba, that Cuba made progress on education. Yes, I think. Really? Really? There's no comparison.
He's praising the Castro regime.
I mean, I don't think there's anything bad on that. In that response, I mean, it's not the greatest.
And by the way, Bernie will say, only in this capacity. In any capacity! In any capacity at all. He's praising the Castro regime and people boo. And he's almost like Chris Matthews. Really? Yes, really!
I understand.
Yes, really, you crazy old coot! So that's him reacting.
I mean, the really part is about booing advancements in education, right? And so I love the, part of that education program was to spread the glory of socialism and all this other stuff. It's like, what do you think the Republicans do with a lot of our public education textbooks, right? Like, there's, I'm an atheist, so I'm part of the whole stuff there, so I argue against it. But like the push for creationism in science class, right, is garbage, right? That's being pushed by the conservatives, right? And to run that kind of, to push their indoctrination, right? We have a lot of the whitewashing of history, right? Especially American history. We have the Pledge of Allegiance, right? Which is socially kind of enforced on people to get up and take part in when you're in school, right? You don't want to be the one, like we've seen some of the videos on there. There was that have gone viral where someone didn't stand for the pledge and a kid went over and kicked the stool out from under him and all that other stuff. So these things exist. So that criticism of what came with improving the literacy was all this propaganda. It's like, bitch, please, we have that propaganda here in our schools for a lot of the things and stuff there. Now, obviously, Sanders probably shouldn't be doing it because that hurts him in Florida, which is swing state, right? That's not something you can do, but it's something he said, quite a bit over the course of his career, and it's something he's got to live with and try to work around. But
reacting to boos. Now let's compare this with a stacked audience. Exactly Donald Trump in the same scenario. This was someone actually a Bernie fan, I think. He tweeted this out. It said, Twitter, does Bernie Sanders need to do this if the booing doesn't stop? And this is the clip.
Let me talk. Quiet. That's all his donors and special interests out there. So, that's what it is. And by the way, let me just tell you, we needed tickets. You can't get them. You know who has the tickets for the? I'm talking about to the television audience. Donors, special interest, the people that are putting up the money. So it is. The RNC told us we have all donors in the audience, and the reason they're not loving me. Look at this. The reason they're not. Excuse me. The reason they're not loving me is I don't want their money. I'm going to do the right thing for the American public. I don't want their money. I don't need their money. And I'm the only one up here that can say that.
Yeah.
Yeah, he knows.
So that is a good response by Trump, right? But that's not every response and stuff there. So there's Bernie had a good one when talking about Medicare for All, and when the moderators were asking the questions, he called that a right-wing talking point. And he, in his rebuttal, talked about how you'll see ads run during tonight's debate that are going to go against it, right? So Bernie Sanders had a very similar thing there. And you can find other clips, I'm positive of it, where Trump flubs things as badly or worse than what Crowder thinks Bernie did with that particular boo, right? So they're out there, and it's what you pick and choose and line up here. So nothing in here is... makes me worried about Trump outclassing someone on the debate stage. In fact, one of the arguments that we made for Bernie and why Bernie should have been the nominee in 2016 and why he would have been better is that he could attack all the things that Trump was propping up as how he was going to support America and the workers and all that other stuff. Bernie's got a better track record on it, and he can attack that. And so the attacks that Trump would have used against Clinton or did use against Clinton wouldn't have been effective against Bernie, right? And Bernie would have outclassed him there. So that was one of the arguments, right, for Bernie over Trump. But yeah, this doesn't show.
The real audience isn't in the room.
That's
it's
very...
It's not those people there.
Yes, that's a very... Yeah, he knows the audience are people watching at home. That couldn't have been more embarrassing for Jeb Bush if Donald Trump rested his scrotum and testicles on his forehead on national television.
Yeah. Mm.
And this has changed politics. I think a lot of people just say, oh, Donald Trump went against the establishment. No. Yeah. It's important. Obviously, a lot of these people have consultants. A ground game is talked about a lot, right? People talk about a ground game. It's not as important as it used to be. Now, the ground game won Ted Cruz, Iowa. Great. I think it won Bernie, Iowa, if I'm not mistaken, with Hillary Clinton. I know Rick Santorum.
No, Bernie lost Iowa both times.
Won Iowa back in the day and then it ended up being Mitt Romney. So that's important, but guess what? With the internet now, everything you say at any point is the ground game because people in Iowa will see that. People in New Hampshire will see that. And Donald Trump understood he didn't need to speak to the moderators. He didn't need to speak to people in the audience. He needed to speak to people at home, which is ironic considering that Bernie fancies himself, a man of the people, and he was so flustered by these donors there in the audience booing him, you shouldn't care.
All right. Give me a second here. I'll be right back. All right. Sorry about that. Have a good night, Maddie. Sorry about that. Have a good night, Maddie. We'll finish it up here and probably just hang out, chat with chat. Well, we'll finish. We'll do the other video that was requested. But
you shouldn't care about it. It should not be less relevant. The people at home are the ones who matter. And this is what was interesting, too. Replies were from people on Twitter. The response, there's a couple saying, holy crap, no wonder he got elected. Look at all these people responding on Twitter. Wow. So for a lot of these folks, this is another reason I think that Donald Trump is going to win. This is the first time in 3 years they've actually watched Trump in a debate instead of a clip that CNN has sliced and diced to make him look bad. Right? These disasters that are Democratic debates are forcing Americans who are not necessarily pro-Trump to go, oh, right, okay, I'm not getting anything out of this. Let me see what Donald Trump has to say, as opposed to playing that game of telephone with Don Lemon saying what Donald Trump has to say. Yeah. And you see the reaction. They're going, oh, my God. Oh, my God. You know what? Not only is that a good point, this is going to be really hard to deal with. And most importantly, it shows that President Donald Trump has faced the exact...
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's one clip and one reaction to it. Like I said, it's a good line, good response that Trump had to it. Right? I'm not gonna lie. Right? It's impressive here, but I mean, you're kidding yourselves if you think that was something consistent for Trump. throughout the debates, right?
Same situations as you see with Bernie Sanders, and he's handled them far better. But it is remarkable. We can see a direct comparison. Boos from a stacked crowd with Bernie, boos from a stacked crowd with Trump. It's very rare that before the actual debate of the two candidates, once they go through the primaries, that you get to see the exact same scenario for a comparison, for a contrast. We have that there, and it begs the question, why can Trump just speak through the boos and not care at the exact same issue, whereas Bernie shrinks into his suit like Tom Hanks at the end of Big? So let's go through the candidates real quick. We have to get to Gavin McInnes. Warren, let's say any of these people, she's obviously probably not going to be the candidate. Warren, Trump wins. Why? Because he just bull rushes her, right? He's not going to walk it back. The closest we have is, from an apology from Trump is with Carly Fiorina. And all he said was, you got a good face. She's good. She's got a good face, right? Because he knew she was going to go after him. Warren, he's not going to back away from Pocahontas. He's not going to back away. He's only going to get where she has no chance. Pete Buttigieg, no spine, no way he can handle it. It's going to look like a father spanking a child, and you know, I hate to say, it looks like Buttigieg also every time they.
So much for respect, Crowder, right? So much respect for that, right? I mean, it seems weird to be yelling at people for being disrespectful, and you're doing this.
Turn to him, I expect him to answer with, "We can hardly stand the wait. Please, Christmas, don't be late." Men's butts, and you're like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I also don't think he's gay. I think he's the only straight man whose gay husband is a beard.
You're talking about Chasten.
Yeah.
All right, some homophobia and transphobia right there in one comment. Jesus Christ. All right, and you wonder why YouTube demonetized your ass.
I don't know. Klobuchar, she's kind of an unpredictable one here. I think she would actually probably be the hardest candidate for Trump to beat. I don't think it's likely that she's a nominee. What would Donald Trump do with Klobuchar? Just make stuff up. That's probably what he would do, let's be honest. It's like, she's an unknown. Let me look through the Oppo. They would hand him Oppo research. He'd go, no. I think I'm going to say that she's contaminating drinking water. What? Aaron Brockovich tried to stop Klobuchar. Like, what are you talking about? I'm winning. Mike Bloomberg. I think Mike Bloomberg, if he's a nominee, some people think he might. I think he defeats himself. Listen, this guy is Midwest poison, especially if he picks Hillary Clinton as a running mate. If people saw Hillary Clinton as an elitist, I don't know how they couldn't see that with Mike Bloomberg. And by the way, he didn't ban big gulps.
I mean, if your argument is all this here, Trump's an elitist, right? Like, Trump would be in the same boat as Bloomberg, right? So, but as we see here with the debate stuff, none of it is polling or any data, right? So it's just, hey, it's my feels. So, all right, I don't know if there's nothing much left on this one. So